No clickbait. As a Titan, you miss your guns. You miss when you would mix buckshot, bullets, and a clenched fist into a cocktail of destruction. You miss dancing along the knife's edge. You dive into conflict and use every tool at your disposal to come out on the other side. Flow as you fight and survive through hell. So, get your shotgun ready. Here's the quick build. Prismatic Titan with no backup plans. Conditional Finality, a 900 RPM SMG with attrition orbs, and a flexible heavy. Twilight Arsenal for your super, thruster, catapult lift, shield throw, shackle grenade. Aspects are knockout and diamond lance. Fragments are devotion, protection, purpose, dawn, and ruin. Here's a screenshot of the armor and artifact mods you'll be using. For a longer breakdown, stick around. Okay, setting expectations. This build does not beat Consecration Titan. It does not erase hordes of enemies with a single melee regardless of tier. It is harder to play, it is more fragile, it does less damage. So, why play it? Because it's fun. I keep coming back to it. When I fail with this build, it is because I screwed up. I could have done better. I had the tools to succeed. It feels good to win with this. I've been going into Master Lost sectors because it feels really good to run them and win. And I've failed. This is a harder build. It has a bunch of moving parts, and when I lose track, I stumble and feel like everything is falling apart. But when I'm in the thick of it, working with the build and capitalizing on what it and I can do, it feels incredibly satisfying. Can it keep up in top tier content? Short answer, yes. Long answer, it is a fun, intense build forcing you to make moment-to-moment decisions. It relies on using every trick in your kit. It plays similar to Doom in how you are a constantly moving whirlwind of death. You are fighting for your survival and exulting in the flow of combat. It uses melee as a tool rather than as the focus. Also, hard Synthos-Consecrate isn't fun to me. Here's where you can skip to if you want to get to the guide and don't want to deal with the in-depth mechanics. Okay, first, this is incorrect. This is much closer. You need 2 rapid shotgun kills with about 4 to 5 seconds of leeway between them, or 1 kill on any enemy above red bar. Any enemy kill with a shotgun while you have a void overshield will refresh this void overshield duration and health, but it will only go up to the maximum duration of the buff you received initially. So, if you pick up an orb and receive a 5-second overshield, it can only be refreshed back to 5 seconds. Even if you use your shield toss or get rapid shotgun kills, it will still refresh back to 5 seconds. The opposite also applies. If you receive a void overshield off your shield toss or rapid shotgun kills, picking up orbs will refresh it back to 10 seconds instead. Now, let's be real. Void overshields kinda suck compared to Woven Mail and other resist options, although that'll be buffed slightly next season. They're stripped away too quickly and feel like they evaporate in a breeze in more difficult content. How do we make this better? We can either add more resists, or more methods to acquire overshields. Facet of Protection and Galvanic Armor help with the former, and Facet of Purpose, Shield Toss, and No Backup Plans help with the latter. These all work well with Transcendence, which you get pretty quickly with a gun that freezes and ignites. I like Attrition Orbs because it allows you to get a quick orb off a tanky target. Reaper is also helpful because it's an orb off a weapon kill. Siphon mods give you extra orbs on multi-kills, which can happen frequently with the ignitions you'll set off with the second shot of Conditional. In addition, with stacks on stacks, only 2 orbs are necessary to get a special finisher, which make it pretty easy to do with a Reaper proc into an ignition multi-kill for 2 orbs and some special ammo. Important to mention, Radiant does not stack with no backup plans, but it's useful to have it because it allows you to pop barriers with Conditional Finality, and is also a reliable 25% damage boost when you lose the overshield. The heavy flexes to whatever's useful in the moment, but we'll get into that further in the guide. Okay, Conditional Finality. Conditional Finality has significantly longer range than any shotgun in the game for this reason. It just needs to land the pellets for a freeze and ignite. The target can be immune and the ignite will still generally go off. For example, the Glassway boss can be shot in the shield and will take damage from the ignite. Phalanxes too. The Warlord's Ruin boss will also ignite despite being immune, and while it will not take damage, it will kill all but 1 or 2 Acolyte eyes around it, which is pretty useful. Conditional Finality does decent damage. It's not 4th Horseman, but it is a workhorse weapon. This is your tool to deal with both adds and big targets. It is better at dealing with adds, but it's still good at dealing with champions. It has a lot of utility with this build because of its ability to freeze and ignite. First and foremost, Diamond Lance. You'll notice in the footage there is often at least one being used or thrown at any time. Upon killing an enemy with an ability, a stasis weapon, or just causing an enemy to shatter, you receive a stasis lance. The main detriment, besides not being consecration, is it's annoying to consistently make in all situations. If you get stuck on an enemy, it doesn't help you for that enemy. But Conditional solves this. When you freeze, then shatter a tankier target, it will make a Diamond Lance. This means you can scoop that lance up and use it on whatever you see, or a priority target. That barrier champion being a pain, turn it off while you deal with other enemies. Spawn coming in, drop a Diamond Lance on them, and blow them up with a follow-up shield. This goes well with Knockout, letting you pick up Amplified and Galvanic Armor. Everything feels like it chains together, and I'll go over it more in the guide. Where is this build bad? This build suffers at long range. It has difficulty dealing with targets at distance because it requires a shotgun and several tools to remain in the fray. Snipers, as usual, are a pain. It excels in short range, but if you start losing flow and missing shots, it starts to fall apart. I soloed both Duality and Warlord's Ruin final bosses with this build, and the main issues were when I would run out of enemies to kill in arm's reach. On Kaido, I was able to resolve this by using an Ill Omens with Attrition Orbs to continuously sustain. On Hefnid's Vengeance, I made copious use of Transcendence, Heal Clip, and Cover during the damage phase. In GMs, you're roughly the same power level as a Prismatic Getaway Warlock. You have a variety of tools to stay alive, but you need to use them in the moment. Every second matters and you need to be aware. So, what are the objectives of the build? You want to use every tool at your disposal to hurl yourself into the fray. There is a branching tree of options you have to handle every situation, and the more you use the build, the more fun it becomes, because you understand the options you have available. Let's make it simpler. Use your shotgun to deal with adds and provide you tools to deal with bigger enemies. Use your abilities to facilitate this, popping Transcendence whenever you need your abilities back so you can do this even better. Get Diamond Lances and use them to delay targets or push into new areas. Get Void Overshield and Amplified up, and keep them up as best you can because they will keep you alive. Finish enemies to provide you with additional ammo to repeat the process. With this in mind, here's the full guide. Conditional Finality is the main weapon you branch out from and come back to. When you enter into combat, you want to gauge threats and deal with them appropriately. This is determined by how you get uptime on your buffs. You want Void Overshield and Amplified. You want to avoid getting hit, and when you do get hit, you want to get your Overshield back. You have a variety of methods to get a Void Overshield, all of which will end up coming into play. Tossing your shield grants you a small amount of Void Overshield per enemy hit, and you'll use this a lot for barrier champions because it'll give you Radiant to pop them easily. Killing 2 red bars or any higher tier enemy with a shotgun will give you a full Void Overshield and start health regeneration. Picking up an orb will give you a small amount of Void Overshield for a short duration. You can make these orbs through Reaper, Siphons, and Attrition Orbs, which I do recommend for the reason that getting free orbs is extremely beneficial on Prismatic. As for Amplified, you can freeze and punch a target. Conditional and Diamond Lance both assist with this. You can shield toss red bars or enemies you've softened up. This pairs well with suspending enemies, which your Shackle Grenade and Electrified Snare both do. By doing these two things in concert, you'll have a Void Overshield and Amplified up pretty consistently, which will allow you to survive stray hits while in the fray. This doesn't make you invulnerable, of course, far from it. When you start taking hits, you need to keep taking enemies down with your shotgun or start getting into cover. Ideally, you keep dealing with enemies because 2 shots with conditional is enough to clear out entire groups of adds with the shatter and ignite damage. You are also very good at dealing with champions, capable of getting through their health with freezes and ignites. You will also make stasis lances aplenty. You want to use these to deal with add spawns, but also to postpone dealing with certain groups or enemies. For instance, you can fire conditional twice into a champion, and this gives you a stasis lance. You can then pick this up, turn, and throw it at a different oncoming target to give you more time to deal with a champion. This allows you flexibility when dealing with multiple targets and gives you time to make decisions. Your toolkit also generates good transcendence energy because of your access to suspend, freeze, ignite, and a balance of light and dark. In pitched battles, pop transcendence whenever you get it, because having free suspend and jolt is very nice to have. In places where I can get away with it, I enjoy using an eager edge sword, to allow me to both get around easier and get out of bad situations. Substitutions are easy in the heavy slot, because your heavy is a flex tool meant for the occasion. You can run a linear fusion rifle for tormentors. You can run an eager edge cold steel slammer for GMs with overloads, or to get around faster. You can run a rocket launcher for boss damage, but it's harder to suggest replacing conditional finality. You obviously want a shotgun, and I've tested out quite a few, but you want a shotgun that quickly kills orange and red bars with less input on your part. This is because when you start taking your time killing enemies, they start shooting you. The longer you need to stay in one place, the more likely you are to die. Ideally, you want a shotgun with a damage amp. In terms of exotics, Duality, the slug pellet hybrid, not the dungeon, was surprisingly fun. You use the hipfire to stack up buffs on adds, then use the slug mode on champions. Main issues are it burns through ammo. Fourth Horseman is fantastic for champions, but also suffers from burning through ammo quickly, even when dealing with red bars. This makes it hard to use as a consistent weapon to deal with all enemies. Acrius felt slow, painfully so. It's also hard to justify killing adds with it, given it's a heavy weapon. Tractor cannon is quite good, but the same thing applies. You want a shotgun you can use to kill champions and random enemies. The main issue here is you tend to have some difficulty with building up transcendences easily, and your range is neutered by having 2 shotguns. Legendary alternatives would be an aggressive frame shotgun with trench barrel or surrounded. With no backup plans, these are quite good at dealing with champions, but they're limited by their ammo capacity. My personal issue is where it starts to feel closer to a melee build, where it would be better off swapping to Frenzied Blade instead of Shield Toss, alongside 1-2 Punch, and then Synthos, and then it'd be better with Consecration. I wanted to differentiate the build. Your primary weapon with the build is up for choice, but I fully believe Attrition Orbs is an extremely powerful perk with fast-firing weapons. Anti-barrier SMG is not bad when you're always in close quarters, and you really like getting orbs to keep up sustain. And if you need to unload a mag of primary into a champion to bring down a barrier, you might as well get a special finisher out of it with all the orbs you'll make. Or you can get some sustain off the orb you get, which can be super helpful in a bad situation. The orb giving you a chunk of void overshield and health and some ability energy back is really nice. I did my best here to make a functionally independent build that would do well in top level content, and wanted to prove it would do so I made sure to use it in high stress situations. This build really feels like you're dancing through hell, and it forces you to make moment to moment calls in a way that I really love. This is how I want Titan to feel like. Not just the slam or brute force, but the vanguard. Your tools laid out before you, ready to be used. Not just a punch, but a variety, all feeding into one another. Freeze an enemy with a first shot, shatter them with a fist to get your amplified. Pick up the stasis lance and hurl it at the next target as you charge in. Ignite the next group. Void over shield, reload, suspend another group, and throw your shield in. Swap to your sword, dive on a champion, taking out your shotgun with both barrels ready to fire. There's a beautiful flow to it that I feel captures what I enjoy in Destiny. And I think it's what I've missed about Titan this season. I'm looking forward to being disappointed by Unbreakable. Or not. We'll see. Thank you for watching. If this video was helpful to you, please consider liking and subscribing for more content. Thanks, and have a good one.